Now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep fitting in.
Yes, what's going on, guys? It's G, and we are back in the building. Before we obviously start, again, as I always ask, please, guys, if you can make sure, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and please make sure you're liking, please make sure you're sharing. Guys, I'm out here as much as I possibly can. Anytime I do get any spare time, I'm recording like 5 videos a day, just for you guys, trying to put as much content, you know, possibly out there. Look, you got me out here changing clothes and shit, like everything is going on, trying to do as much as humanly possible, obviously, to get as much news out there for you guys as possible, and obviously just to have a conversation. You know, I love all the comments, and so big up everyone who has dropped a comment on any of my previous videos. Like, I love and appreciate every single one of you, even the ones that I don't agree with, you know, half the time. Like, I still appreciate you. You know, it sparks conversation, and that's all we can ask for, you know, from this content game, is to have conversations, you know, hear a difference of opinion. You know, it's great listening to other individuals and, you know, seeing, you know, how they think, you know, especially about the club that we all love, which is obviously Liverpool. So today, why are we here? So today, I just wanted to speak about kind of like my transfer wish list, you know, heading into the January transfer window. Obviously, the window is now open. Liverpool's first signing has obviously been Cody Gakpo from PSV. But, you know, the elephant in the room, you know, and by now it's not even an elephant, it's a freaking zoo. You know, the zoo in the room is that Liverpool obviously need to sign a midfielder. Now, obviously, we have got ourselves into, I say we, but Liverpool have got themselves into a situation whereby this is all reports, opinions, and things like that. So let me not say anything I'm about to say is factual. So please do not run away and say, oh, but he said that this and that is true and blah, blah. No. This is more opinion, but at the same time, just from reports that we, you know, have seen over the last like couple of years, especially, is that Liverpool want Jude Bellingham. That's the guy. That seems to be the one and only player that we want to seemingly sign in that middle of the park, which is obviously a vital component of this Liverpool team. You know, it makes this Liverpool team tick, as we have seen obviously previously in the years when, you know, we were good. You know, in the probably 2018 to 2020, what made us so special was as much as obviously your wing backs and your attackers scoring all the goals, it was that midfield. But most importantly was in the middle of, obviously, of the park. And we've seen for the last couple of years that Liverpool have been, you know, really, I'm trying to find the best word that doesn't get me cancelled, but I'd probably say Liverpool have shown an interest. That's probably the best way to put it. Liverpool have shown an interest, obviously, in Jude Bellingham. We all know that Klopp likes the guy. We all know that he plays for Klopp's former club. We all know that Klopp's got a good relationship, supposedly, you know, with Borussia Dortmund. So it's a deal that I'm assuming Liverpool and Klopp want to do, and it's a deal that a lot of fans would love to see happen. Now, unfortunately, that deal isn't an easy deal to do because of the price tag that would be involved with someone like a Jude Bellingham. You know, this is a guy who's 19 years old, you know, recently just played at the World Cup for England, got the world at his feet. He's been captaining Borussia Dortmund prior to the World Cup, playing Champions League football, has been for a couple of seasons now. You know, this is a player who has really excelled in, you know, his position. This is a player who, you know, when you do watch him, as much as he is young, you know, he does play like a mature footballer. And he's got all the characteristics that I would probably say that someone like a Jurgen Klopp would love to have, you know, in the team. You know, someone who's mature, seems like is a bit of a leader, someone who wants to put themselves about on the pitch, someone who's willing to, you know, play till they're basically, you know, dead on the floor. You know, someone who's going to put their heart on the line, and all these kind of various things. You know, has resemblance of previous Liverpool players I'm not going to mention. So, of course, to Liverpool fans and probably Klopp, he probably embodies joining a team like Liverpool. So we think, so we think. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But my, would I say rebuttal to that is that, again, he's very, very young, so we have no idea what he's going to turn out to be. Of course, you do watch some players, young players, and you just know straight away. Kylian Mbappe, you just knew straight away. Erling Haaland, you just knew straight away. Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldo actually not so much, to be fair. I'll actually say you probably didn't think he'd turn out to be what he was. That was through hard work and graft. But, Lionel Messi, trying to think of other players, even Phil Foden. Again, not to that crazy level, but players you've looked at from when they were young and you just thought, yeah, this kid's definitely got it. This is a guy who, give him a couple seasons at this level and he's going to be, trying to take over the world, and there's probably like a host of others that I'm just not naming. So please let me know, in the chat. But, when we look at Jude, would I say Jude falls into that category? I would say he definitely falls into the category of a player who I believe could become a very, very good player, whether that's world class or anything like that. That word does get thrown about, but he's definitely a player that I look at and think, yeah, he could turn out to be really, really good. If he's coached and nurtured very well through his development over the years, then yeah, I believe he could definitely be, one of the top midfielders out there. But again, like I said, he's 19. The price tag that comes with someone like a Jude Bellingham is a lot. And we know what Liverpool Football Club are like, and we know how Liverpool Football Club like to do their deals. Sell to buy a model. That's been our motto, since Jurgen Klopp kind of come in. At the moment, we ain't got no one to sell. So at this current moment in time, that part of the transaction is looking a little bit shaky, is looking a little bit tricky to kind of do. I don't know how Liverpool are willing to now do their deals moving forward. We know about the club and we know about potential sales and things like that. That's probably the only way that Liverpool are going to be able to afford, a deal like this. My issue, would I say, with the whole Jude Bellingham thing is that, there are a host of players out there. There's so many players in world football, and I understand there's not many 19-year-old kids, out there who are as good as Jude Bellingham. Of course not, of course not. But there are a lot of players out there who I feel can do a similar job, and I think that is the key for Liverpool moving forward. Hence why, I'm going to give you kind of like there's 3 players I feel that, Liverpool should be looking at potentially to sign, whether it be in January or the summer. At least 2 of them should. If we can get 2 of them done now, then great. But if not, then, we definitely need to be looking at that, towards the summer transfer window. But these are, I wouldn't say alternatives to Jude, but these are other players that I feel that, I wouldn't mind if the club, I personally, again, in my own opinion, I wouldn't mind if the club signed some of these players, because I feel that what we need to remember with Liverpool is stop maybe thinking about the profile of the player in terms of the name or anything like that. Maybe even stop thinking about what it is they've necessarily done for that club. Take what they have done for that club and picture them in a Liverpool lineup. Picture them under Klopp and picture them how Klopp would like, that player to play. So we look at Jude Bellingham, box-to-box midfielder. He's a midfielder, obviously likes to get around the pitch. I feel like his stamina does need to be worked on a little bit. That was something that I noticed during the World Cup. Was I feel that whether he maximizes all of his energy, really early in games, and he goes full tilt, for 60, 70 minutes, but he did look like he was kind of blowing, after that 60, 70 minutes, and that was something that I really did look at, during the World Cup, especially. I think it happened against the USA. We came up against quite an intense midfield, the USA midfield, which is actually a couple of players from there. But we came up against a midfield who were quite intense. And when you were watching the game, you just saw that Bellingham just kind of faded out. It wasn't like he was playing poorly or anything. It's just he faded out because he was just tired. He was just blown, And again, he's young. So, of course, stamina's not going to be potentially that high, but I would expect it to be a lot better. And it's happened in other games after that in the World Cup where I felt that Bellingham just tired towards, the end. Again, with the amount of energy that he's probably expanding in games. That might, you know, be a reason. I don't know. You know, I really, really don't know. But that was something that I definitely looked at, because when you go into a Klopp midfield, as we've seen with this midfield currently, that's exactly what's happening at the moment, is that the team are blowing out by about 60 minutes. Once it hits 60 minutes, you're just watching the performance levels are dropping, not even necessarily because all of the time they are actually playing poorly. You just see everyone's getting a bit tired. You know, and that wasn't really the case, you know, before a few seasons ago, when everyone was kind of in their peak and in their pomp, and, you know, we were playing really well, winning every week and stuff like this. Like, I just feel like now that is the case with a lot of the midfielders that we've currently got, is that their performance levels will inevitably drop if they are tired. You know, that extra 2% that they would have, you know, from minute one is not there anymore. And that extra 2% could be the difference between you winning that first ball or losing that first ball, winning the second ball, you know, being able to close down your man, being able to get there in time to be able to, you know, stop a through ball, or all these kind of little things. So yeah, that was one thing that I kind of noticed. But again, that might just be, you know, the game in itself, you know, that, you know, Bellingham has played or anything like that. So, you know, it is what it is. But also, you know, for Borussia Dortmund, from what I keep being told, he's someone who does get himself a few goals, which is obviously fantastic. You want a midfielder, you want everyone to be able to chip in with goals. If a defence could chip in with goals, fantastic. Midfield, the same. You know, we don't want to always leave it up to the attack, because if they're having a bad day, we need to be able to find goals from elsewhere. But again, in a Liverpool midfield, we need to remember that's not what Klopp requires. He does not necessarily, I think he's mentioned this, you know, in passing before, but I don't feel like he even wants a midfielder who goes out there to get goals, necessarily. Obviously, it's great if a midfielder does. I feel like for him, that's more of a secondary, you know, tertiary kind of thing. I don't feel like that's something that he looks at when he's trying to find the right profile for a midfielder. I don't think he cares about the goals, because that's not what Liverpool do under Jurgen Klopp. Look at every single season. You know, I don't even know who our top midfield goal scorer would even be. I think, you know, we were all excited when Fabinho got all them goals, you know, back in January during, I think it was the AFCON, when he was scoring a few goals here and there, because it's like, bloody hell, we've got a midfielder who's actually scoring goals. You know, that doesn't happen under Klopp. You know, never happened when we won the Premier League. Ginny, maybe, potentially, you know, someone would have to, you know, let me know. So as much as we see Jude Bellingham do that for Borussia Dortmund, that's because he's playing in a completely different role. Yes, he's playing in the centre of midfield. Sometimes he's playing behind a striker. Sometimes he's kind of just a bit of a drifter. But we need to remember that's not what Klopp requires from his midfielders. He needs his midfield to be workmanlike. He needs his midfielders to be able to get up and down for 90 minutes. You know, he might not need to actually play 90 minutes, but they need to be able to do that, you know, and they need to be able to do that at optimum level. You know, I don't have the data and I don't have the stats in regards to his numbers for 90 minutes in terms of his stamina and his runs and his sprints and things like that. Again, that's something that obviously the club would have, and that's something that all you data analysts out there would have. But I'm just purely going by my knowledge of the game, eye test and things like that, having watched enough football, you know, over the last few years. But again, this is just all my opinion. So again, that's another thing. I look at Jude Bellingham and I think, okay, cool. That's another, when I say point against you, you know, so to speak. And thirdly, which isn't actually his fault, is the sheer fact that with this price tag, and I see a lot of Liverpool fans say this, and I've seen a lot of Liverpool fans talk about this, you know, they believe that, you know, getting in Jude Bellingham, you know, it really will take our midfield to the next level, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer or anything like that, but it doesn't. You know, I personally, again, my own opinion, I don't believe it does. I don't believe that signing Jude Bellingham takes this midfield any further. I think it leaves it exactly the same way it is, in terms of you have to look at it from a base level of things, in terms of the sheer fact that, you know, he comes in and replaces who maybe Jordan Henderson potentially, you know, does that mean that then improves the midfield? I don't believe so, because you still got two other positions that might potentially need to be upgraded upon. You know, two positions that, you know, unless they're all having a great day, you know, more often than not this season anyway. And in my opinion, the back end of last season, we were seeing it that these guys are not, they're not performing at their optimum level, personally. Thiago played pretty decent last season, it has to be said. But overall, during his time here, I've been a little bit underwhelmed, to be honest with you. I've not looked at it and thought this is a great signing. I wouldn't put him in my top anything for great signings for Liverpool. Very good player. We know what he can do, but you know, does he fit into what Liverpool are trying to do? I feel no, because we end up taking away from what he's actually good at to be able to play our football. And then it's like, what was the point of signing him, you know, in the first place, you know? And when I look at Jude, I'm like, all this pressure that's going to be put on Jude Bellingham if we do sign him, you know, in the summer, it's going to be that, you know, it's almost that, yes, you need to come in and be Steven Gerrard. Firstly, he will never, ever be Steven Gerrard, you know. Whether he eclipses that or not is irrelevant. He just will never be Steven Gerrard. There can only be one of an individual, you know, so we need to stop with those kind of comparisons. You know, he's not going to ever be that guy ever in his life. You know, there was only ever one Steven Gerrard. He's now trying to be the next or the new Jude Bellingham. So we need to respect him in what he's, you know, what he's actually trying to do. And I think that when it does come to things like that, that might be quite a lot. He's only 19 years old. You know, a lot of Liverpool fans seem to be resting all their hopes on him. And I'm thinking, again, this is not like signing Kylian Mbappe. That's a player that you rest everything on. Whatever age you want to bring him in, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, whatever. I think he's 23 years old now. That's a player. Jude Bellingham's not at Kylian Mbappe level. You know, no matter what we might think, what we hope, he might get there, whatever, he's not at Kylian Mbappe's level. You know, that is an elite talent. You know, that's someone who, from the first time we ever saw him kicking a ball for Monaco till now, it's just been elite, you know, ever since, you know. And again, not to say that Jude Bellingham cannot hit those heights. It's not to downplay Jude Bellingham whatsoever. Good player. But we need to understand the context, and we need to understand the type of player that we're getting in and in the type of role that he's going to fulfill at this football club. So when I take all of these things in consideration, I then obviously look at the fee that it might cost. You know, I sit there and I think to myself, I don't know. You know, it'll be, if we had, of course, pitless ends of money and we could just go out and splash, you know, 300 million, you know, in a summer, for example, then of course, you know, it wouldn't really matter. You know, then you just go out, you get your Judes, and then you pick up all the other kind of players, you know. And I've seen people say, oh, should we get Jude or should we get lesser talents? No, I think I wouldn't see them as lesser talents. I think there's other players out there who could do equally the same job as a Jude, you know, in our midfield. You know, whether it be better or worse remains to be seen, of course, but I still think that these are players that, you know, who could still do, you know, a good role, you know. And it's not just about Jude as well. This is about the rest of the midfield. So one of the players I really like is Yunus Musa, the Valencia midfielder, obviously USA midfielder, used to play for Arsenal, then obviously moved on over to Valencia. He's a player I really like. He's a player that, especially, and then, you know, it kind of enhanced that during the World Cup, but I've watched enough of him for Valencia to kind of make my own judgment on that. And I just think that when I'm watching him play, he's at the level that I would have expected Harvey Elliott or a Curtis Jones to be at. You know, that's the level. That is the minimum level for me personally that I expect you to be at as a youngster at Liverpool Football Club, especially if you're going to be a youngster at Liverpool Football Club who's playing in the first team. I expect you to be at that level. You know, again, they're English, so, you know, I'm not even maybe necessarily talking about being in the England team, but I am definitely talking about, you know, you need to be on the cusp of these kind of things. You know, you need to be showing the world, you know, to be honest with you. We've heard Pep Yenders in his book talk about Curtis Jones and was it Pedri or Gavi, you know, comparing the two. They're light years away. You know, let's not pretend they are light years away. And I'm not saying that Yunus Musa is potentially even on a Pedri level or anything. Like, I feel like Pedri might just be like the step above that. But what he is he's a very, very competent midfielder. I feel that he can fill that kind of either Thiago or Henderson's position, regardless. I feel like he can definitely fill one of those two slots. Energetic. He seems like a player who can get himself about the pitch. Goal scoring is not something that he specializes in, but it's almost like I kind of like that because, again, I'm trying to put myself into the mind of Jurgen Klopp of as to what he actually wants, not even into the mind of what I would want, because what I would want is completely different midfield. You know, I'd want a bit more technical players in there to play a different way, but I know that that's not what Jurgen Klopp wants. Even though he has got quite a lot of technical players, he seems to be still trying to play this high energy, high octane kind of football. If we're just looking at what Klopp, the type of player that I feel could work there, Yunus Musa, you know, he's definitely someone, you know, I feel that could, you know, definitely do a role, you know. Don't know what I think he's valued at around 20-25 million euros. And that's just valuation. So again, you know, that might be more, whatever his release clause is. I don't know. Is it a hefty deal? I don't think it's going to be anywhere near a Jude Bellingham or an Enzo or anything, or even a Caicedo, to be honest with you. But I definitely think that that's a player that Liverpool should definitely be looking at. You know, I genuinely would be really excited to see, you know, someone like that in this Liverpool midfield. And again, I'm not talking about this guy needs to come in and fill in the slot and be a starter straight away. No, if he's got to be a sub or anything like that and rotated into the team, that's more than fine. But I'd be a lot more happier with seeing him on the bench than, again, an Elliott or, you know, a Curtis Jones. Another player. Now, this is a player that Jerry, big up Jerry, man. This is a player that Jerry's spoken about before. And at first I was a bit like, yeah, he's all right, blah, blah, blah. You know, he signed for Leeds in the summer. And I think from RB Leipzig, and I thought to myself, yeah, look, he's an interesting one. I just kept thinking, this is an interesting signing. Like, I wonder how he's going to do, especially in a Leeds team that isn't really that good, so to speak. Not doing that well in the Premier League, or they weren't doing that well in the Premier League this season before the World Cup. And I just felt like, is this someone I would really want? And then, you know, as the season's gone on, his performances, you know, they've been brilliant, to be honest with you. They've definitely been brilliant, in my opinion. You know, he's performed really well. He's really adapted to the Premier League, I think, you know, straight away. You know, this is a player who hasn't had to come in like others who have had to kind of come in. You got to adapt. It's a new new league, and you know, you got to do this and all this kind of excuses sometimes that we hear with some players. No, this is a guy who hit the ground running, and that's Tyler Adams from Leeds United. Now, obviously, he just signed for Leeds United, so that's a deal that, unless so, I guess we'd have to double whatever Leeds paid for him. So I don't see Liverpool trying to do that. But again, that is the type of player I think he can play in. He's definitely someone I would prefer to see over an Amrabat in filling in that Fabinho role. You know, we've seen Amrabat, obviously World Cup, looks like someone who can get about the pitch, looks like someone who, you know, loves a tackle and stuff like that. And I'm not saying he'd be a bad signing, so to speak, but when I look at Tyler Adams, I look at a player who is almost in my opinion, in that mold of kind of like Fabinho, where yes, he, you know, Tyler Adams can get up and down the pitch. He can play in the 6, he can play in the 8. He's someone who loves his tackles, but he's also someone who can pick out a pass. He's also someone who's really calm on the ball. He's also someone who puts his head up, you know, and is able to find that pass when, you know, when needed. Someone who I feel that I would be able to trust a lot more in tight situations, as opposed to an Amrabat that I don't feel like Amrabat gives me that level of confidence when I watch him play. What he does give me, though, is tough tackler, you know, someone who maybe if we played in a pivot, like in a two-man, like a 4-2-3-1, for example, maybe you play someone like a Tyler Adams and an Amrabat, you know, then I could potentially say, yeah, that could actually work, because you've got two defensive midfielders, but you've got one who loves to play ball, but can still, you know, do the tough tackling. But then you've got the tough tackler. He's the one who's going to Mascherano his way into things. And then you've got your, not of this level, but then you've still got your Jabi Alonso, who's still there, who can still do the tackles, as we saw with Jabi Alonso, but he can pick out a pass as well, you know, and he's still calm on the ball, you know, and he seems to be quite street smart, and that's what I really like about him. So big up Jerry for putting him in my thoughts, to be honest with you, because he wasn't ever in there before. But then when I watched him during the World Cup, it kind of just cemented that, and I said Yunus Musa and Tyler Adams, they are two midfielders. I think they come into this Liverpool team, and I genuinely believe that they would improve it. And what I mean by improve it is, Don't think about the profile of player. Don't think about the name of the player. I mean, improve the midfield in terms of the output of that midfield. What we require our midfield to actually do. What we require, what we want our midfield, what we need, should I say, sorry, our midfield to do, which is to be able to press at high energy, but also when we do win the ball back, still have that calmness about us to be able to find the pass. Yes, it might sometimes come across a little bit erratic and things like that. But where you had Gini Wijnaldum, someone who was able to press and was press resistant, which I think Tyler Adams is. You know, when you've got that in your kind of team, but he's still able to pick out a pass. And when I mean pick out a pass, I'm not talking about potentially always finding an assist. No, I'm just talking about being able to have the calmness about you to be able to give the ball off to the other players in the team who are going to get us the goals or the assists and things like that. Yunus Musa and Tyler Adams are two players I would love to see, you know, at Liverpool Football Club. So those are kind of like my two, kind of like at the top of my wish list. But again, Tyler Adams, I know he just signed for Leeds. So that, you know, I don't know what that would even look like in terms of trying to sign someone like that. But in the summer, you know, there definitely should be kind of, you know, some level of conversation. You know, is there a way to bring him here? Would he mind leaving Leeds after a season? I think he would straight away if he heard Liverpool were calling. And I think he comes into this team, man. And I think he is and could potentially be what we know Fabinho to be over the last few seasons, in terms of that person who can break up play, but is still calm enough to kind of give the ball and, you know, pick up the passes and things like that. I don't think he can play a centre-back like a Fabinho. Fabinho, that was one good thing about him, is his versatility. He could play centre-back and right-back. I don't see Tyler Adams being able to do something like that, but we shouldn't need that. You know, we should have other players in those positions to be able to do so. So yeah, that's kind of, those are the two that I'm really, really looking at. And now we've got other players. Declan Rice is another one. He's another one I like. I think he reminds me more of a, as probably closer to a Fabinho, but again, that price tag, I don't know what that price is going to look like. You know, these English players, the English tax is crazy. So, you know, sometimes I prefer to, even though we need it, I do prefer to steer away from these English players, because unfortunately clubs price these guys way too high, you know, way too high. You know, from when we fleeced Sheffield United 25 million or whatever it was for Rhea and Brewster, that kind of tells you everything you kind of need to know. You know, Bournemouth 20 mil for Solanke, like all of these kind of things, man. Like it's crazy. English players, their prices are absolutely nuts, and it's nowhere near their actual valuation. But obviously, it's worth its weight in gold when we've got the homegrown quota and things like that that you've got to take into consideration. You know, when taking away an English player from, you know, some of these teams. But yeah, Declan Rice is another one. I think he could do that Fabinho role really, really well. And he can also slot in at centre-back as well, in case, you know, God forbid there's any level of injuries where we need someone to slot in there. I feel like he's someone who can do that. He's someone who likes to bring the ball. He reminds me of a Matip, but just in the defensive midfield. Hence the reason why I've always mentioned about Matip potentially playing in that defensive midfield position, because they remind me, for me, they're so similar. They're both players who, in my opinion, look real unorthodox when they dribble, because that's not their nature, but they like doing it anyway. But it's like when you see them dribble, they just look a little bit like teams never know what to do with them when they start dribbling with the ball. I always find that quite hilarious, is that Matip will dribble and teams don't know what to do. But Declan Rice does the same thing, and teams don't really know what to do at times, because they're like, should we go out to him? Nah, he's going to pick out a pass. Nah, he ain't going to be able to dribble. But Declan Rice is a decent dribbler. You know, I'm not going to underestimate that. He's a very decent dribbler, and he can pick out a pass as well. So, you know, he'd be someone I feel could obviously as well definitely come into this team and potentially, you know, help us out. Caicedo, he's another one. I think Caicedo is someone who can play in the 6, but also can play in the 8. So, you know, that's two positions right there to pick, you know, pick your poison, in terms of which one you would like to see him in. Yeah, it just depends on whichever position Klopp kind of sees him as, to be honest with you. But he's definitely a player that sample size is a little bit small with him. It is a little bit small. He hasn't played that many games in the Premier League. He only just come like the other day anyway. So we do need to just be careful with that. And the price that, you know, Brighton are seemingly asking for him, you know, it might be a little bit, do you know what I mean? So do have to be a little bit careful, but he has shown himself to be quite competent in this league. And he is very, very young. So he's definitely someone who maybe we need in the future will turn into this real, you know, real beast. But, you know, at the moment, he's good. He's, you know, he's decent. He's decent. I wouldn't say any more than that. I think with Liverpool's midfield situation, we are so in the mud that some fans are maybe just overvaluing a lot of players, you know, because of the situation that we obviously currently find ourselves in. So certain players all of a sudden look amazing when you come up against Liverpool's midfield. You know, you know, Leicester City's midfield looked better than our midfield, you know, the other day. But would you necessarily want some of their players? Maybe a Tielemans, potentially a James Maddison, actually, you know. I mean, I'm saying all of this now and, you know, maybe I would actually take some of their midfielders. But, you know, you look at some of the teams' midfielders that we played against, Leeds United that we lost to, Nottingham Forest that we lost to. You wouldn't take, Thailand has been the only one, but from Nottingham Forest, you wouldn't take any of their midfielders. Off the top of my head, I can't even think who they've got in there. And you wouldn't take any of their midfielders, but it's because of the position we find ourselves in currently. That's why, you know, it's coming across that kind of way. But look, that's kind of like my wish list when it comes to the midfield. There are other areas of the pitch I still believe that Liverpool do need to keep an eye on and definitely have an eye for the future. Centre-back being one of them. We have no one else who can play left centre-back in this team whatsoever. For me, that is a cause for concern. Because if you've only got one player who can play that position, what happens if that one player is unavailable? No one else can actually play there. And when I say no one else can play there, they do not play well there. You know, what Jurgen Klopp requires from that position, they do not offer that. So we need to be looking at that left centre-back position and definitely you know, I wouldn't say you can't upgrade on Virgil, but I mean, definitely looking at, okay, we need someone for the future. You know, if he's going to be a young player, whatever, that's absolutely fine. But there needs to be someone, in my opinion, who is competent enough to be able to even step in for Virgil, you know, now, for example, you know, to give Virgil a rest more than anything, but also, you know, isn't going to be requiring to play 30, 40 games, you know, in a season, because he knows that Virgil is the guy there. But we've got a ready-made replacement. We've got that right centre-back with Konate. I mean, Joe Gomez is there as well. He probably would end up keeping him just for the sheer fact of having two players who can play at that right centre-back role. But I do believe that Gomez might be better placed to play right-back. But left centre-back for me is a very, very cause for concern. And I think quite a few people are sleeping on that position purely because we have Virgil. We've got so many defenders. But let's actually look at that and understand that Matip and Virgil both in their 30s. Joe Gomez hasn't developed enough, and that leaves us with Nat Phillips, who is probably going to leave, and you know, Konate. You know, that's not enough. You know, when you actually boil it down and you actually look at it, that's not good enough. And you know, eventually you're going to need to sign some centre backs at some stage in time. So yeah, but that's not a January transfer window. That is more of a, for me, in the summer, I'm thinking, okay, Liverpool, if you're serious. If we do have the funds, of course, that will always come into play. If we do have the funds to go out there and do this, I would definitely sign a left-sided centre-back, young, upcoming, promising, really good, imposing defender, but someone who's really, really good with the ball at his feet, like a Virgil van Dijk in that sense. I'm not saying he needs to be Virgil, but just someone who has, would I say, certain characteristics that Virgil van Dijk does have. And then, you know, moving forward, we would be set in that kind of position. And then it wouldn't be so bad keeping a Joe Gomez around. Whether you would like that or not, it remains to be seen. But then it won't be so bad keeping these kind of players around as like your secondary options, because you know you've still got your main two to be able to play. Right back positioning. I know we're all excited of obviously Calvin Ramsey, you know, seen him play a couple of times, looks pretty decent at the ball and all these kind of things, but he is quite young. You know, we've already got a young right back as it is in that position in Trent Alexander-Arnold, and we're putting, you know, another one as our kind of understudy. That's like a weird one, because the reality is you're probably looking at, you'd need like probably an experienced right back, potentially, or someone maybe of the ages of like a Simicast or something like that. So someone obviously inevitably is going to be older than Trent anyway, because Trent is so young, but maybe someone with a bit more experience, you know, someone maybe that both Trent and Ramsey can kind of learn off in different aspects, but someone who is still competent enough to want to come in. Again, look, this is very hard to find. I'm not saying, yeah, you just wake up tomorrow, we go sign this guy. No, I know it doesn't work like that. There are a few right backs out there who fit that kind of profile, in my opinion, but that's what I'm kind of looking at from that right back, you know, positioning. Because I feel that left back is kind of covered in terms of the age for the next few years. Yes, we're going to need to look at signing a young left back, I would say, in a season or two. But where we've got the right back positioning is already so young, I feel like there's no one with real experience there anyway. So yeah, again, that might be a Joe Gomez thing. If so, then we're going to need a centre back. If not, then, you know, we don't need the right back, all these kind of various things. But that is one area of the pitch I'm also looking at. Attack, I think Bobby should go. If he does, then maybe you might look at signing in another attacker. I think that might actually be a position they might actually generally look at, you know, for some weird reason. I know we've got 6 already when everyone's fit. I think, yeah, 6 already when everyone's fit. But if Bobby does go, I do think that we would need just one more in there, like someone quite young. It could be someone from the academy potentially, but yeah, just someone young enough to maybe even like a Ben Doak, to be honest with you. Potentially that might actually be what they're looking at, you know, anyway. So yeah, but the attack, yeah, I feel like it's kind of, we don't need to keep touching that area of the pitch. We need a second goalkeeper, especially if Kelleher looks to leave. But yeah, midfield obviously being the main thing. And my wish is that we bring in if we're going to get Caicedo, then get him in. But Liverpool need more than one midfielder. And I'm just worried that bringing in a Caicedo just kills your whole budget on top of the money we've just spent on Cody Gakpo, 37 million, you know, rising up to, I think, 50 or something like that. You know, then you're going to try and sign a Caicedo. That's 100 million now you've spent on 2 players, you know, in the window. Is that enough? No, I don't believe it is. You know, Liverpool will probably get top 4 this season, but not because we are good. It's because the rest are really crap. You know, Spurs, you know, not playing well this season, which leaves, you know, Newcastle, Manchester United in the other positions. Newcastle, we don't know what's going to happen with them moving forward, and Manchester United are a bit, I don't really know. I feel like they're consistently inconsistent. You know what I mean? They will have periods where they're really good, and then have periods where they're really, really bad. So we'll wait and see, obviously, with that anyway. But yeah, that's kind of my thinking, is that, you know, a Yunus Musa, Tyler Adams, Declan Rice, Caicedo as well. Amrabat, if you want to throw in a cheap one, but if you get an Amrabat, I then still expect you to just go out and sign another midfielder because of the fee that might be attached to that. But yeah, for me, I feel that Liverpool need to be getting in 2 midfielders now, integrate them into the squad, and then you go out for your big summer signing, whoever that might be, you know, Jude Bellingham, you know, in the summer. But Liverpool need to get 2 midfielders in. 1 is not enough. It really isn't enough, man. Like, there's not enough quality in this squad to just be resting on our laurels. Don't know why we keep Arthur Melo around. I think we should just cancel that contract. And just kind of, you know, cool, we lost out, whatever, that's fine. But I don't feel like he's good enough anyway, to be honest, even when he did come. So, you know, it remains to be seen with that one. But again, that's just kind of like my wish list in terms of Liverpool for January, and obviously looking towards the summer, but we'll dive into that at a later date. But that's me. We'll be dropping a few videos over this whole month in regards to Liverpool transfer. Not gonna say daily. I was gonna say I'll try to give daily updates, but to be fair, there's not always updates to give out every single day. But I will be doing it a few good times a week. So just make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and you'll see it pop up. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok, because I will be posting most of this as just reels. If any big news and stuff like that comes up, then of course I'll drop a video, but make sure you are following me on Instagram and TikTok, because that's where you're going to most likely see a lot more news posted out in regards to transfer roundups and, you know, things like that. Again, links are in the description. But guys, we come to the end of the video. Happy New Year to all. You know, started this 2023, you know, just trying to make sure that we all have a blessed year. And yeah, man, like, just make sure that we keep our eyes, you know, eyes peeled kind of thing. You know, make sure that we're not resting on our laurels. Like, let's keep the standards at Liverpool Football Club as high as possible, and make sure that we're not dropping these standards, because once we start dropping the standards, we allow other things to drop as well, and then the whole thing just becomes a whole shit show. So, you know, we definitely don't want that. But yeah, guys, if you haven't already, as I said at the beginning of the video, please make sure you like him. Please make sure you're subscribing to the content. I'm G, and I am out.